Hello, welcome to Bistro Buzz. Bistro Buzz is all about buzzing. Buzzing about art, buzzing about culture, buzzing about literature, buzzing about poetry, buzzing about lifestyle, or just about random reflections. Basically, it's a conversation between you and me. And how it works is Bistro Buzz very often hosts interesting people on live talk shows like we're doing this evening. And these people really have exciting things to tell us, very inspirational people who give us food for thought. And what else we do is that we have these posts, we have invitations for you to debate, to give your opinion, or just to comment. So the table at Bistro Bus is heaped, and you are welcome to walk in, to taste it, to listen to it, to speak about it, to watch it, to argue about it, or just to enjoy. So look out for the space at Bistro Buzz every day. And now let's move to the event of the evening. Conversation with Koral Dasgupta, who believes in walking the road not taken by others. Koral Dasgupta is a literary entrepreneur. Interesting term, right? She runs a she also discovers new voices through her story laboratory called Tell Me Your Story. Her work has been recognized in the list of Innovator 25 Asia Pacific 2019, prepared by the Holmes Report, which is a New York based PR news agency. Coral also consults on communication and content with educational and corporate bodies. Coral is an author too. She has published 5 books whose themes range from comedy to classic. Her fourth book, a comedy which is called Summer Holidays, has been optioned for screen adaptations, and I'm very eager to see it. Her fifth book, Ahalya, which is this book right here, is a part of a 5-part Sati series which is coming up from Pan Macmillan Publishers. So let's welcome Koral Dasgupta. Hi,
Thank you
Koral.
so much, Shitupa.
Thank you for being with us, Koral. So
Totally
let's
my
get on
pleasure.
with yeah. So let's get on with the first thing that I want to ask you. It was very wonderful to discover that we have both studied at Chandaniketan. Anybody who has stayed there for some time at least will carry its music in their hearts, right?
Yeah.
And I can see that your love for Shantiniketan is as strong as it is in you as it is in me. Now, when you were studying there at the Ashram University, you were very young, and that's a very impressionable stage of your life. In what ways has its influence shaped you into the person that you are today?
Uh, Vishwaharati was a different ballgame altogether. First, of course, the influence of nature. I went
Yeah.
from Calcutta. I stayed in North Calcutta. My home is still there. And from there to Vishwaharati was quite an interesting journey because the kind of vastness that we had there was not there in Calcutta.
Yeah,
So
all that
that
open
entire,
space.
yes, the Amrakunja, the Purana Ghantatala, the
Mm,
Simhasalam,
yes.
I can go on. And then I was a student of economics, and we had to cycle or walk for a long distance to reach Padma Bhavan, which
Mm,
was the Department of English. Now, economics department has shifted towards that, and so all the departments are together, or humanities departments are together. Those days, we had to walk or cycle. So, that was quite an interesting thing for me. I was one of those very rare students who used to attend Boitali, though it was not compulsory. And so my morning started really early, and I had a lot of exposure to nature, which probably in some way or the other shows in my writing today. Secondly, the professors. I was a student of economics and extremely had enjoyed very good relationships with all my professors. Having said that, I used to be found more in Kalabhaban and English department than in economics. I
and
would
why
be
was that? Why was that?
just my love for the subjects. So instead of studying economics, I found better sense in watching what people are crafting and carving in Kala Bhavan.
Okay.
Or in English, they would be discussing a lot of theories and books and Victorian literature and Romantic literature, and I loved to talk about those, and I loved to hear about those. So the good thing was that the professors never shooed away, and they were very welcoming. The
Yes, I remember that.
the students were quite threatening, because I especially remember that that was the year when a very attractive professor had just joined, fresh
Okay.
out fresh out of his wedding, and I was just about to enter Padma Bhavan, and there was one student. I wouldn't name either of them. So there was that one student who said that you have come, welcome, and you can enjoy, but make sure that you are not eyeing on our professors. Our professor is our professor. We will do whatever we want to. So I was like, okay, I won't. But then, am I crazy that I won't? Of course, I would.
I know. Yes, I remember that there was used to be a lot of, movement among the students, even, from between departments. And
Yes,
yes, the teachers were very, very accommodating. In fact, all of us, I think, developed, relationships with the professors and teachers over there, calling them, we used to call them Dada and Didi. We
Dada
never
and
called
Didi,
them,
yes,
yeah, we never sort of said
yes,
sir and madam or anything like that.
yeah,
Hi,
absolutely.
Madhya. Yeah. So that's what you're saying, that it has had a lot of influence, and your
Oh, yes,
writing, I think, has had a lot of influence from Shantiniketan.
yes, yes.
Now, you have also written about Baul music, right? Which is
That was an
very, very,
article with
yeah,
Prince.
very inherent to Shantiniketan. So, do you think that the Baul music, which has moved you and has moved me also, do you think it can inspire the youth today, given that materialism is the mantra today, which is very different from what Baul music says?
You know, it's a little strange because materialism is the mantra of probably our generation, uh, which is somewhere towards the edge of the millennial construct, right? But the core millennial construct, which lies somewhere in between, they are said to be, if you look at the researchers, they are said to be extremely non-materialistic, and that probably manifests in their choices. So I do find a lot of interest in things that are beyond our regular or day-to-day, needs. There is an interest in consuming things which give you a deeper learning, and I have seen youngsters being very, very impressed and very interested in such. In fact, if that wouldn't have been the case, probably my Ahalya wouldn't have been appreciated. Or I had written a book called Russia, that was my third book,
Yes, I know.
and I
About
thought that nobody would read it. In fact, the I spoke to one or two literary agents, and they also say that nobody will read this. But it didn't happen like that. A lot of people read, and a lot of people loved.
in fact,
So
I
then,
mean, whenever I know of it, it is very interesting. About a relationship. It's a relationship book, and it's a very interesting relationship that you've
yes,
written about.
it is a relationship between three Bharatanatyam dancers. I love triangle.
Mm.
So going back to that thing that we were talking about, I do see a lot of interest of people in understanding, in actually finding the bigger meaning, or trying to explore the bigger meaning of life, uh, which is uh, which is probably not something that we found when we were growing up, or that is not something that by the time we have grown up, we have been explained that it is just like that or nothing. I don't see that happening with the present youth. And when I say youth, I quite sadly uh, exclude myself from that. I have probably moved on from youth.
So that's actually very, very, it's very heartening to know that you still believes in what Baul music is all about, which is very close to Sufism actually.
Yes.
So
Not
yeah.
just Baul, I have spoken to, and I won't say research. Research is a very strong term, but I have tried to interact with Dhakis also, the
Mhm.
Baul singers, the Dhakis, and
Mhm.
I have seen that they have a huge life. I mean, I remember in Mumbai, I had interacted, and that is also documented somewhere. I think I wrote about it for News 18 or so. I had interacted with a Dhaki, and that guy had told me uh, in Bengali. What he told me was, "প্রতিমাকে যখন নামানো হয়, বুকটা কত টনটন করে সেটা তোমরা জানো না." Which, when translated in English, he said that uh, when you take the goddess out of the pedestal for Visarjan, do you even realize what happens to the heart? That guy, after,
It
I mean, I
takes.
was taught, yeah, after prolonged conversation, I figured out that this guy comes from a remote place which is close to Murshidabad and is a Muslim, you know?
Imagine,
Yes,
imagine,
yes.
imagine.
I mean, yes. I mean, I wouldn't have ever thought that, but that is his profession. That was his profession, and he never thought. He never gave it a second thought about, or his
Religion.
family didn't. It was their work, and they enjoyed it. And yes, they had their hearts paining when the goddess was taken out of the pedestal.
Yeah. In fact, there is a poem by I mean, apparently a Dhaki's wife is saying it, because Puja or Dashera is a time when everybody goes home.
Yeah,
And it's a family get together, but that is the time when the Dhaki's home becomes empty, because the Dhaki is traveling out for
yeah,
his profession. So that is how the what the wife feels when her husband, when everybody's husbands are at home, but her
mm,
husband isn't. So it's a very poignant and a very, very, something that really
true.
touches. Yeah, yeah. Hi Anuradha and Madhya, thank you. She says it's superb what is happening. Hi Anamika. Okay, what has actually inspired you to begin writing?
Uh, I used to scribble something or the other always. I traveled to Andamans. I came back with a diary, which I had lost, and my mother found out. And
Okay.
then, yeah, and then she told me that you had written all these things about. I had even forgotten that I had written down, but now I remember that when everybody was sleeping or everybody was calling me that let's call it a day, I would be up there trying to write down whatever happened through the day, and I had always done that. In between, I stopped completely for something that happened, and I didn't want to continue writing. Uh, Writing actually started when I was teaching in a management institute, and I figured that kids are done with the Kellogg's and Cadbury's case studies, and they wanted something special. And I thought that okay, let's talk about brand personalities, and I brought Bollywood to the classroom. So I was actually named Bollywood Wali Ma'am. So, so those discussions, many of which were very impromptu, I was trying to document them for the next year because I am a naturally forgetful person. Forgetting comes naturally to me. So I was documenting down and also trying to figure out the supporting documents for my hypothesis. And by the time I had that entire thing almost in place, I mean, it was, you can call it a first draft kind of a thing. I figured that, okay, I have actually covered um, all the topics that appear in a consumer behavior book. Consumer behavior is a subject in marketing management.
Right.
So I started putting them together in a more structured format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 3 months after I finished the manuscript, Westland has taken it. So
Yeah,
the credit, of course, 90% of the credit goes to Shahrukh,
yeah, I
10%.
was going to say that that's the book which you had written about,
Yes,
based on Shah Rukh's way of doing consumer
yes,
marketing. Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Should be, must be very interesting, very, very interesting. And that is what
Yeah,
started you on the journey, right?
yes.
Great, great, great. And benefits for us readers. Let me just read out a few of the comments that are coming in. Anamika
Yeah,
Datta says about the dhaki. Yes, even I feel a deep spiritual connect with the beats of a dhak.
very true.
And Anuradha Gupta says material wealth is not the sole goal of today's youth. So she agrees with you. Freedom, empathy, and giving seems to rule the roost. Nice. Hi,
Yeah.
Sonia. He says it's so nice listening to you all. Hi, Rituparna. Hi, Anupama. And then we'll come to the next thing. Now, the
Sure.
themes of your books that you've written are very varied. So, you have relationships, you have biography, comedy, and now it's mythology. In fact, your fall winter collections, I think, is about Shantiniketan, right? There are
Yes,
stories about Shantiniketan.
it's a
Right, right.
romantic, yeah, saga.
It's yes, yes, yes. So, how do you decide the theme or the genre of your books?
I never decide the theme or the genre. I just see a character, so and I write about it. So let me tell you that Fall Winter Collections was something that I used to write when I was in Shantiniketan.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was written half in Bengali, half in English, half noting down the things that were happening around.
So
So
you
other
did
than the
note down, you did record your impression
yeah.
at that age.
So
Lovely.
other than the protagonists, I think everybody else is a true character. So if anybody from that generation, my generation, reads the book, they will actually
Mm,
find themselves. They would know who they are without
beautiful.
me having to point out. So there was this Kalidashidir Dokan where we used to
Mm,
go for,
yes, I know. All their
yeah,
samosas. Yeah.
yeah, and we used to go for lunch there, and dinner used to
Mm,
come. And
mm,
so Kalidashidi was unique. So we would ask in the morning that Kalidashidi, what is for lunch? She would say
mm.
aloo water. And
Huh.
in during dinner, we would say, Kalidashidi, what is for dinner? She would say motor aloo. So she would just reverse aloo motor aloo, and they would become two different dish. Actually, it is the same. So, so all those elements are very much there. But I always wanted to be a sculptor. I couldn't. So this book is about a sculptor who I kind of visualized, whom I thought that, what if,
In fact, I'll just interrupt you. Sriparna Basu, this is the comment she has. Fall winter collections is so picturesque. Even those who haven't visited Shantiniketan would love the ambience in it. See?
thank you. I'm so glad that you have read it or loved it. So, so that was so when actually Niyogi Publishers had asked me that, what are you doing after Power of a Common Man, which was my first book.
Mhm.
So I thought that anybody will reject it, but I still gave it to them that, why don't you take a look?
Mm.
By then I had translated the Bengali portions to English, and they said that there needs a lot of work needs to be done, but we would love to take it ahead. So I was elated, and that was a very good. It was a very good experience for me. I remember I during launching Fall Winter Collections, I met my very close, dear, heart to heart friend Joyce and Gupta, who is a very veteran actor and theater actor and film actor, and he was very impressed with the book. So after Fall Winter Collections, that was when I felt that I had actually, mentally I had arrived to being an author. When I was writing Rasia, I wanted to write the story of Rajshekhar Subramanian, who was a Bharatanatyam dancer. I didn't know anything more about the book, seriously. I just knew that I will write the name of story of Rajshekhar Subramanian, who is a Bharatanatyam dancer. And rest, when I sat, the story wrote itself. I didn't know that after introducing Rajshekhar and Mansi, the couple, I
Mm.
would introduce a third character called Vatsala. They all came in between as I was writing. After
So
that,
the book found you, the story found you, rather
it
than you
always
found.
happens with me like that. I never plan my books. I mean, even I tried, I
Mm.
heard, I heard and saw my contemporary authors literally planning. They would do all those character graphs and plot graphs. I tried
Yes,
doing that.
Excel.
It became a
Mm.
disaster. So I was like that. No, this is not happening. I would rather let it flow when I sit.
Mm.
So after Rasia, the Dance of Desire was a very emotionally and spiritually draining work. After I finished that, I wanted to really enjoy. And that is when I wanted to write the story of Shiraz. Now, Shiraz, in summer holidays is only a partial character, you know. He is not even the main character. Shiraz is a small character. But by the time you reach the end, you know that Shiraz has actually held all the characters and everything that is happening around. Uh, it's, in his own way, I wouldn't give away that what happens to Shiraz, but
Mm.
in a very small way, I mean, he is kind of a Nawazuddin Siddiqui in a book, you know what I
Okay,
mean.
okay.
So
Mm.
I knew that I would write the story of Shiraz without making him very prominently protagonizing that story. But it would be a comedy, a very serious comedy, if I can put it that way. And after that, Ahalya again happened. Actually, I get bored very fast. I cannot, I mean, hats off to all those people. You are one of them who have maintained and been loyal to one genre. Uh, what's the
So
name?
I have my first book was actually a psychological thriller, so it was not a
Ah,
historical fiction.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's lovely to read a variety. So a person who likes one of your books and then picks up the other one will find that refreshing, difference, which is what at the end of the day that's what makes a author, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
you are
absolutely.
definitely following the path not taken,
Yeah,
right?
I am just enjoying myself. I'm not even thinking about those. I'm just enjoying myself leading the kind of lives that I would have loved to lead, but then trapped in the usual humdrum that everybody goes through. So
Right.
I have a life away from my life.
Anamika Datta says, Fall Winter Collection. Wow, the title. We'll pick it up now. And
Thank you
then she
so much.
said, the story wrote itself, so nicely put. So people are really following you.
Thank you.
Okay, storytelling now is a very powerful media and goes actually much beyond than just writing stories. And you have used its power in different forms and at different forums. How did you discover the power?
It just came to me, I think I am the queen of underdogs, and I identify myself with that. And I have a lot of empathy for every kind of story, and I know that a lot of good stories don't get taken forward by traditional publishing because it's not
True,
practical
true,
to do so.
very true. Yeah.
Having said that, I mean, that this is my very personal belief that each and every person has a story, and
Mm-hmm.
if you can bring each and every person closer to the stories of their own lives, then they wouldn't have to look for motivation outside, you know, because the stories of their own lives will be able to inspire them.
And
Uh,
everybody has a story.
yeah, and then not every time a person needs to express as through in a fictional or fictional medium. It can be a fictional or non-fictional medium, whichever they choose. End of the day, every story boils down to the person that you are. The way you see a story and tell it is about you, right? When another person
Right.
says the same story, it will be different.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of power there, which I personally understood, and I also felt that a lot of people can't express themselves to the popular media because traditional publishing finds it difficult to be taken ahead. Having said that, there is a beautiful story in every life, and those needs to be discovered more for the person who is telling the story than the other persons who are listening the story. I believe it that way, and I also believe that there could be a time when there wouldn't be any further readers because readers would get consumed in the number of authors that we already have. But there will
Mm-hmm.
never be a dearth of author because people would still love to put their stories
Tell their
out
story.
there, document their part of participation in a social era. So that is the work that I am doing, documenting individual participation in a sociological era. And I believe that each and every story of this particular era is the history of this particular era. And that gives me immense satisfaction in the way I have been able to do my work in a small scale, but in a significant scale.
No, no, it's very significant. You just said something which is like, it's really a food for thought that whatever you're documenting is the history of this era. Very
Yes.
true. Very true. And I suppose that's why you've named it Tell Me Your Story. It's the your which is very important. Tell me your story.
Today, I mean, today there are lots of journalists, lots of media channels that are trying to impose upon you how well you are. You are happy. Some are shouting, and some are shouting that no, you are very sad. You are extremely sad. You are
Mm.
downtrodden. Let our stories tell us how happy or how sad we are. You know.
True. That's the real. I mean, and the reality. Basically, don't be. You shouldn't be told what you are. You should be able to speak your reality yourself.
Exactly.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Um, Now let's come to your Sati series. It has a very strong feminist strain. Just the name Sati itself is very feminist. Do you think feminism should be an everyday affair, applied at home as well as outside? And how do you do it?
You know, I don't relate to the term feminism much because it has a lot of aggression in it. It has a lot of uh, feminism, the way you mean it, wants to channel the entire conversation in a particular way. But popular feminism, the way it has shaped up, is a shop. That is how I see it. That feminism has become a shop. There are a few people who are trying to be very robust, very aggressive. For example, I'll tell you why I call it a shop. And I know that I might lose some followers by saying that, but I'll still say it's
But
very
you will
close to
gain
my
a
heart.
lot of strong followers.
I hope so. So, feminism today, I know of a lot of channels that are saying that women should have financial independence. They should go out and work. They should make use of their talent. Now, I have to ask them that are you trying to say that a homemaker doesn't have a talent and that talent is has no value or no worth until and unless that person goes out and brings back some money? What is the
Exactly.
what is
Why
the
does it have
work?
to translate
Yeah, what is the
it?
work that has happened to
Mm,
educate a man and tell that
mm,
man that whatever comes to the home belongs to the home, or if you want the woman to be financially independent, a man has to be domestically independent. Otherwise, you are putting an extra pressure on the woman, right? In that case, given this context, of course, the woman should have the choice. She should exercise her choice. But if a woman finds that her best talent is homemaking, why do you shame her? Why do you tell her that she is not doing enough? Rather, you tell her that whatever, you tell the entire family that whatever comes to the family belongs to the family, right? And by doing that, by advocating that women should go out and work and gain back financial independence, what have you done? You have actually told the woman that a man, poor thing, cannot change. You only, woman, please go out and do your bit because a man cannot change. Is that feminism? It's not. I'm sorry.
yes.
Right? So I would rather explain my understanding of this theory as I would term it feminine rather than feminist. In my feminine ideology, what I believe is that I don't want to give up the very strong womanly spirit, the very strong womanly characteristics that I have in order to compete and establish that I'm equal to a man. One, though I'm doing far more than a man. No doubt about that. I can
True.
talk about it in a very serious way. I can talk about it in a very hilarious way. I can talk about it in whichever Russ you want me to put that into, I can. But uh, the fact is that I would not like to give up the very strong feminine ethos that I carry in terms of my gender. I do believe that my son, who is a very small child, needs the mother more than the father. Not that my husband can't do it. A man and a woman, either the gender doesn't describe or gender doesn't say what anyone can do. Anybody can do anything if they have the intention to do it, and they can do it to perfection. Having said that, given the anatomy that I have, there is a feminine tenderness in my communication, my body, you know, there is a tenderness. And that itself is a communication to my child. I would want my child to understand that communication because it is important for him. to take that communication. It is a part of his growth. Secondly, I take myself very seriously as a mother because I am not only uh, shaping up the present, but I'm also shaping up the future. And that future will contribute to the economy, to the sociology, to the gender politics, to the economical discourse, to every kind of thing that is yet to come. And I take myself very seriously in that aspect. And when you say that you I mean, when you say put yourself, thread yourself in all these things, somewhere I feel that the feminist, tick marks, right? Like, 50% yours, 50% mine. This is yours, that is mine. I can do this. I can, the pure male bashing aspect of feminism, they all somewhere, shut it down. So I would like to call myself a feminine person. And that is where what I try to put on my child, on my family. And I do get the right kind of support.
Beautifully expressed. I don't think anybody could have expressed it better. Really, I think all of us are very proud that we have the feminine characteristics in us. And as you said, that I think what we have
Thank you.
in us makes us much more rounded, much more, I mean, better than possibly the male species of humankind. And
Yeah.
beautifully said. I think so. All our viewers are also saying the same thing. Rituparna says, shaping up the future, creating a better one in our own way. Beautiful, beautiful. And Anamika says, feminine is so well expressed. I totally agree with her. And you just
Thank
spoke
you.
about your son. So, what? How do you visualize him as an adult? Because the what you're teaching him, the way he's growing up, he's getting something which I think many men of when he grows up, many boys or many male children are not getting in their homes. So how do you see him as an adult? Quick.
When I was growing up,
Yeah.
I heard so many times that I should be a son to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
tell the world today that I am bringing up my son like he's my daughter, because I would like him to grow up with compassion. I would like him to grow up as a very well informed person. uh, in my house there is the inflow or sangam, as I say, of different kinds of political ideologies, and
Mm-hmm.
we are very democratic in that way. We don't try to
Mm-hmm.
impose ourselves on each other.
Mm-hmm.
So he receives a lot of that, though I try to shield him from the political conversations. But there is something that I and my husband very strongly tell him, that if you are trying to converse on anything, make sure that you know well about it. So every time he picks up some thread from someone and tries to repeat it and pass it on as his point of view, we immediately stop him and ask more. And he obviously gets caught that it is not his, but someone else's. So
Somebody
we just
else's.
tell him the same thing, that if you want to talk about it, read about it. If you say that, I mean, a particular, he will pick up suddenly one particular politician and say that that politician doesn't know anything. And we would
Mm-hmm.
immediately ask him three questions. And it doesn't matter that which part of politics I am or which part of politics my husband is. We
Mm-hmm.
ask him nevertheless. And then
Mm-hmm.
when he stops, we tell him that there is a time for everything. Two, know about who you are talking about. And then you say, right now, you don't have any logic to uh, validate your points. You should be able to validate. These are a few things that we are very strict about.
Beautiful. I'm sure he'll grow up to be a very, very balanced man who would also
We
have the
think that
same
he does so.
compassion and expectation that the respect and reverence that a woman deserves. He would be able to give that. I'm sure. I'm sure of that. And congratulations on being such a excellent mother.
Thank you. I would seek your blessings for him.
Of course, definitely. You have them without even asking. Now let's come to your latest book, Ahalya. So, this idea of sati in ancient India denotes a woman who is devoted and faithful to her husband. But the Panchkanya of your sati series are all women who have had relationships with men other than their husband. Can they be called sati? How?
That is the most interesting part, and that is the reason why I'm even writing this particular series. The reaction that you had was my reaction as well. And when I delved into it, uh, what I understood was that the Hindu philosophy, and I'm not talking about the religion, I'm talking about the philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
Religion is man made. The Hindu philosophy doesn't lend any importance to the body that is temporary. It only considers the more permanent soul and the mind, right? And when you look at, it's interesting that Panch Kanya, which threads these five women, Ahalya, Kunti, Draupadi, Mandodari, Tara. Panch Kanya has been named in the original. There's a sloka in the original epics, and Panch Kanya has been translated by very senior scholars as five virgins, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't do that translation. The scholars did it. They have been called five virgins. And when I delve into it, I figure that this virginity that Hinduism is talking about is about the virginity of the soul, the virginity of the mind. And these women are categorized as those women who could take very brave steps to satisfy their own ambitions, their own vision on earth. At the same time, they made sure that whatever they are doing in their they stuck to, or they didn't, I stuck to is a wrong word, they made sense in the dharma that they
Mm-hmm.
are supposed to follow. So Ahalya's dharma is something very different. Kunti you will find as a completely different character compared to Ahalya. Kunti could sound cruel, but then she is a political person. She looks
Mm-hmm.
at the world from that aspect. It will be something very different for Draupadi, and so is it for Mandodari and Tara. But they have been very, very truthful to their dharma, and their outlook was not about their body. Their outlook was not just about a myopic piece of land or their own little existence on earth. What they were doing had come to be of uh, importance because they were serving the greater good. It was not an individual outlook, it was a sociological outlook. And that is where these women, they have been very fearless. And the touching thing, the touch, someone can touch your body, but when you don't allow a person to touch the mind, that is when you become a sati. Today you find that in social media we get touched by each and everything that is happening. We get so offended. Sati is probably that individual whom you may say anything, but that person is very clear about her purpose on earth and she doesn't deviate. Sati is probably that entrepreneur who has full faith in her work, in the work that she is doing. And in spite of the many demotivating factors that she is facing, she is still continuing. She is still trying to make her path. She is still trying to push the envelope because she believes in it. That is probably sati. Sati is not about how many people you slept with. That is a
So
very myopic definition of it.
maybe one could, there this one way, one mind towards a destination can also be considered a meditation, because
Yes.
they are completely like focused on their destination and how to reach it without being
Yes.
distracted or deviated from anything. And that's why they're sati. And what you said was very true. I mean, the body is transient at the end of the day.
Yes.
So whoever touches it, how does it matter if it doesn't touch your soul? If your spirit
Exactly.
remains pure, it's you still are able, you are still controlling your soul and your spirit, then you remain a virgin. I mean, you are pure, right?
Exactly.
So I think what you say makes a lot of sense. Aruni Banerjee comments, a very interesting take on who Sati is. The notion of transience and permanence is essential to the Vedic philosophy, and using it to understand the feminine body and the body politic is original and compelling. That's
Absolutely.
what he says. Now, again, we are still at Ahalya. I was very intrigued when I read the first few lines of Ahalya. It says, Ahalya's soul is seeking a mother, even though Brahma, her creator, has told her that she will never have one. The whole idea that Ahalya is sculpted and brought to life by a male god without a mother birthing her is diametrically opposite to the idea of feminism. Is it something like life being created by only sperms in an artificial lab condition? Is that the metaphor that you want to bring to the reader here?
Actually, no. My idea of writing Ahalya was that I will not come out of the basic framework of the story. I will keep within that framework and then do the creative thinking and creative writing. Having said that, I mean, I didn't write it with that in mind, but since you pointed out, it does come to me definitely that there are so many. Okay, let me put it across in this way. You know, Hindu philosophy talks about Prakriti and Purusha, right?
Yes.
And these are male and female, not male and female, masculine and feminine characteristics of nature. Hindu philosophy always considered nature as God. So if you look all of these, Indra, Agni, Varun, all of these are actually nature, right? So Purusha is the masculine force, Prakriti is the feminine force. Now, in due course of time, when this was meant to be a nature-based and attitudinal construct, we have made it a gender construct, right? Prakriti, the quality of Prakriti, it doesn't mean that only a woman will have the qualities of Prakriti. It doesn't mean that a Purusha has to be only a man. So you will find in a lot of people, the feminine thing is so strong. Shah Rukh Khan is one of them. And there are a lot of people in whom the masculine form is so strong. Kanna Rama.
Very true. Very true.
That doesn't mean, so it doesn't mean that only a man can be masculine and only a woman can be feminine. The qualities are interchangeable. The qualities are overlapping. In due course of time, we have made it a gender construct. It was not meant to be a gender construct. It was meant to be an attitudinal construct. So now that we are talking about this, how is it possible that a man with a lot of feminine attitude within his heart would not actually want to birth a baby the way a woman does? I mean, we have seen lots of men who are very, very close to their children compared to their mothers, right? And that happens.
Yes, I have.
That might be lesser in number, but then that happens. It happened with my husband as well. I mean, I was not so keen to have a baby. My husband had become a father way before I had conceived. I became a mother much later. I have even given birth. You know, if you know what I mean. So my relationship with my child have developed much later after I had given birth to my child. My husband's relationship with my child developed even before I had conceived. So from that aspect, we can bring it to that there could be men who would somewhere in their aspiration to have a child want to have a child without a mother. That if I can have that, go through that entire feminine hormonal, attitudinal and philosophical journey towards being a parent. And that is what probably
well, you do have single fathers who have chosen to be single fathers.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So I mean, of course, unfortunately, probably they are not able to actually naturally birth, so they have adopted children, but then they are no less a father.
Exactly. And they are doing a fabulous job.
They must be having this feminine strain so strong in them that they want to, nurture a child, basically.
Yes.
Raise a child and grow a child. Yeah. Beautiful. I mean, I'm completely bowled over by the way you've been thinking and what is the angle and the view of this particular book, Ahalya. So I'll just read out quickly some of the comments. So Rituparna says, very interesting take on being virgin of the soul. Archana says, very interesting. Anamika says, Sati redefined and how. This seems to be the truth and nothing else, which is exactly what I felt. And Anuradha says a beautiful take on Sati. So,
Thank you so much.
Kunal, so is there anything more that you would like to say about the Sati series, or about Ahalya in particular? The forum is open to you.
I think we have covered all of these. More people read Ahalya, more I'll get to know how people are taking it. And a lot of book lovers, a lot of book lovers reach out to me these days. Instagram is the place. They reach out to me and they uh, converse, actually. They ask questions, they converse, they try to raise a discussion. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate those.
Absolutely.
So,
Reader engagement is, I think, what really makes most authors go. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. I totally agree. That's the most
So,
exciting part of writing a book and taking it out there. No doubt.
yes, so that is all that I have to say. That read the book, read Ahalya, and if you like it, please do let me know. If you don't like it, definitely let me know. Tell me
Thank
what
you
you don't
so
like
much,
about
Coral. Thank you so much, so much. It has been a delightful evening, and I think everybody, I can see from the comments that everybody agrees with me. It's been a delightful evening, and thank you so much for being with us.
it.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much, Shutopa, because seldom do you meet such an amazing conversationalist to bring out the best in you. So it's
Thank
a
you, thank you,
wonderful
thank you.
time talking to you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, all the viewers who have been with us on this conversation. Thank you so much. And let's look forward to more conversations like this. In the meanwhile, do take care and be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.